Dual Cultivation, WN, Chapter 81. Don't worry, I will be gentle. After taking a few minutes to gather herself, Meng Jia began recalling all the things Tang Hu had done to her to Su Yang, while Chen Yu went outside to leave them alone. His behavior seemed normal at first, and I'd thought that he wanted to change things up when he started being rougher during our cultivation. However, as the days passed, he quickly became more aggressive and violent. Initially, I believed his unusual behavior was due to stress or something similar, so I didn't say anything and endured it. But things changed when he started beating me without holding back, and he'd even started shouting nonsense like someone in frenzy. What kind of nonsense was he shouting? Su Yang suddenly cut in to ask. Meng Jia looked hesitant to reply at first, but Su Yang's intense gazes quickly changed her mind. He was shouting things like, "I won't ever hand you over to that bastard Su Yang," said Meng Jia, feeling awkward and embarrassed from the sentence. So it is because of that, huh? Su Yang sighed inwardly. He instantly understood the situation, as he has encountered similar events multiple times in his past life, where people would become paranoid and insecure because of his mere presence, pushing them into doing things that they normally wouldn't think about. He also said things like, Su Yang suddenly raised his hands, and he said, "Enough. I have heard enough to understand the situation. Although I cannot compensate you for the pain you had to endure because of me, I will deal with Tang Hu to make sure he will never hurt you again, as that is the least I can do." He apologized to her despite taking no part in this fiasco except by just existing. What do you plan on doing to him, if you don't mind me asking? Meng Jia asked with a concerned expression. Are you going to tell the sect about him, or will you? While the thought of Su Yang risking his life by killing a fellow disciple just to avenge her was laughable, Meng Jia couldn't help but feel that such a thought was also in Su Yang's mind. Do you have a problem with me killing him? Su Yang suddenly said in a calm voice, dumbfounding her. Meng Jia's eyes widened from shock, and her body trembled. Although she has come to despise Tang Hu from this incident, somewhere in her heart was still trying to seek forgiveness for him without actually being aware. Perhaps it was because of the time they'd spent together, or maybe because there was a part of her that still loved him, but she simply didn't want Tang Hu to die because of this incident. And naturally, Su Yang was able to see this reluctance within her. I see. Su Yang no longer felt like staying in this place and stood up to leave, where Chen Yu was patiently waiting outside for the two of them to finish. Wait, Meng Jia quickly stopped him. Although what he did was terrible, I can tell that he's also feeling pain. Pain? Su Yang coldly sneered. He then turned to look at Meng Jia in the eyes and said, that man has already lost his mind from cultivating a depraved technique, and you still want to protect him after all he's done to you? How foolish. Meng Jia trembled violently at his clearly displeased tone, and she sat there silently with a blank face, looking perplexed. A moment later, with a nonchalant expression, Su Yang spoke, can you walk? Why yes. Then follow me, he said as he walked out the door. Where are we going? To visit Tang Hu, obviously. Meng Jia stared at him with wide eyes, looking baffled and terrified at the same time. Why would he take her to Tang Hu now? You are done? Chen Yu asked him when the door opened. Then she noticed Meng Jia, who was walking behind him, and her eyes widened with shock. Sister Meng, are you sure you should be standing, much less walking? Don't worry about me, I am fine, Meng Jia said with a bitter smile. I have to go somewhere with Su Yang now, so I will be leaving now. What? Chen Yu looked extremely puzzled at this moment. What happened during their talk for this to be happening? After a moment of silence, Su Yang continued to walk, and Meng Jia followed him. Sister Chen, please, this is very important. Chen Yu sighed and nodded a bit later. Hurry up and come back to rest, okay? Because she didn't want to attract attention with the obvious bruises on her face, Meng Jia covered her face with a veil before leaving the house. After they left, Su Yang brought her directly back to his living quarters. Once they arrived, Meng Jia received cold feet and couldn't approach the house unless she was standing close to Su Yang with her hands tightly grasping onto his sleeves, looking like a terrified child in front of a scary monster. Upon entering the house, Su Yang brought her directly to stand in front of the door to Tang Hu's room. Do we really have to do this? Meng Jia asked in a mosquito-like voice, clearly afraid that Tang Hu might be able to hear her voice from behind the doors. Su Yang smiled, and he suddenly shouted, Tang Hu, I know that you are cultivating a depraved technique. You have 3 seconds to get out of your room before I start making love to your beloved Meng Jia here right outside of your room, not that I haven't done it already. What? Meng Jia experienced the scare of her life after listening to Su Yang's bold announcement, and she quickly began making a run for the door. But alas, Su Yang swiftly reacted by grabbing her by the waist and pulling her directly into his embrace. Tang Hu, aren't you scared that I will take her from you? I am removing her clothes even as I speak. Su Yang then looked at Meng Jia, who was still in his embrace, with a passionate gaze along with a charming smile, and said, Don't worry, I will be gentle, unlike a certain individual. Almost instantly after Su Yang said those words, the door to Tang Hu's room violently opened, and Tang Hu appeared before them with red eyes and bulging veins all over his body. When Tang Hu noticed Su Yang embracing Meng Jia, whose face was bright red from blushing, he roared like a vicious animal filled with rage. Su Yang Gg. I will fucking kill you. Su Yang smiled when Tang Hu reacted to his provoking just like he'd expected. With his arms wrapped intimately around Meng Jia's body, he spoke, "What a foolish man you are, Tang Hu. Because you were paranoid about a problem that never existed, you have not only made that unexisting problem a reality but you have also harmed your partner physically and mentally. If you weren't so foolish and insecure, then she wouldn't be in my arms right now, but yours." Ah, Tang Hu began beating his chest like a gorilla, and his eyes turned crimson red in bloodlust. His skin was also darkened to the point that it was gray in color, almost like elephant skin. At this moment, Tang Hu no longer resembled a human but more of a demonic being instead. What a pity, Su Yang shook his head in silence.